Now with the F1 2025 season underway, after the first race and now the second race, I have to admit that I don't have high hopes for Codemasters' next F1 game, especially after F1 24. I decided to buy it on a sale, and after trying it out, I found out the game is even worse than I expected. And I'll develop it as those videos go on. So with F1 24 now in my library, it really demotivated me from playing F1 games altogether. I didn't know what to do, but then an idea came to my mind. Why not revisit all the old F1 games that I have in my library? And the oldest F1 game that I have is F1 2018. So I decided to do so. I created a new driver and then played a whole season with 100% races with it. Unfortunately, that was done a few months ago and I didn't record that. But now I thought about it, I was like, why not make videos about this? So here we are. Unfortunately, you guys will not see the playthrough of F1 2018. We will begin with F1 2019. But first, let's talk about F1 2018. Now, I decided to spin the wheel to see which team our driver would be with. And that ended up with Toro Rosso. So F1 2018 was done with this team. And yeah, so F1 2018, I was racing for Toro Rosso. And let's talk a little bit about that before we move on to the next game, F1 2019, to at least compare the two. The road of our F1 driver begins in 2018, and long story short, it was a pretty decent start versus our teammate. With Toro Rosso, we finished in 7th place by being consistently quick and always finishing in the points, compared to our teammate, showing Red Bull what we're capable of. Now, enough of that, time for a review of 2018. A short review. What I thought about the game in comparison to others, and if older games were in fact better. The overall car grip with downforce is not terrible. I would say the nuance of cold tires to hot is quite dramatic and nice in making tire temperatures something to think of, as even with slightly old tires you can still put up fast laps until the tires drop off completely. The grip loss is actually decent, but sometimes a bit strange. Grip doesn't completely go to zero, but the way the car regains grip feels a little slow at times. And the downforce produced also has a strange quote unquote, I guess you could say, plateau where suddenly you have no downforce. Overall, the handling is not too bad, and with the direct drive wheel, feels pretty decent in comparison to when I used to play this game with a belt-driven wheel, at least from what I remember. Now, the cars are known to have engine braking, especially back then. I mean, I think all the cars, even today's cars, they have engine braking, but in this game, sometimes it feels too strong on the lower gears, and it behaves sort of like a handbrake. Overall, if you have a good setup, the car performs quite nicely, but it's still a little too twitchy from time to time, especially when you're really pushing. And it's like as if you never have enough downforce, and that's in mid to high speed corners, which is interesting because on low speed corners it makes sense, but whatever. I have to say, at least at the end of the day, like the game is not boring, and it's a pretty decent handling model, I'm not gonna lie. How realistic is it in terms of the real life car? I don't know, but whatever. Now, onto the force feedback. Well, safe to say that even with the DD wheel, like I mentioned, it feels pretty good, especially in comparison to lower end wheels. But it is not great. Actually, it feels pretty good, but it's not really what I would classify as good force feedback. All the F1 games have what I would say it's universally just terrible force feedback. It's a general rubber band feel with some slight bump details, and that's it. And depending on the game, sometimes it's more, sometimes it's less. But at the end of the day, when you get used to it, you can deal with it and be quick and consistent. One thing I did notice on F1 games, especially in F1 2018, is that you can really feel the rear tires, which is nice. Although the force feedback is not what I would classify as good in terms of the dynamic range and better like front tire details, you can at least feel the rear of the car. The front, you gotta just rely on what you see on screen. But yeah, overall, at the end of the day, the game was fun, and I think F1 2018 would sit well in the tier chart. So, oh yes, we are doing that. So I would place it in C tier. It's a decent game, pretty fun, but definitely there's things that it could do better. But what it is for what it is right now, C tier seems good. Now they may change depending on the game, but C tier for now. Now let's go back to F1 2019 as we begin our season. Now in F1 2019, I was hired by Racing Point because Lance Stroll's dad approached me in wanting to join a team to make an all-Canadian lineup. And Toro Rosso just wanted to keep me for another year. I wanted to move up to a quicker team. So here I am joining Racing Point to see how it's like. Or I should say we or F1 driver, whatever. It doesn't matter what terminology I use. We, him, it doesn't matter. But yeah, in practice, I was noticing how the cars were handling. And, with a bad setup, the cars are terrible under acceleration in comparison to F1 2018, where you would have more grip. But anyways, with a good setup, feels pretty good. As we begin our race, the first race of the season, I never do really good in Melbourne, as my qualifying was only decent. But my goal here, or F1 driver's goal here, is to finish in the points. Now, at the beginning of the lap, a bit of a battle with the teammate. Teammate pushes us wide, so now we have to battle our way up the field to try and make it to the points. Lap after lap, I was overtaking the slower drivers ahead of me, and that's when I noticed, the F1 2019 drivers are not super competitive, especially when you're in the same tires. But hey, I got to my pit stop. Kimi Räikkönen, we had different tires, so he overtook me. But when I pitted for my second stop with the soft tires and he had mediums, I overtook him to finish nicely in the points. Sebastian Vettel wins the first race, which is nice. We'll see who actually wins the championship in 2019. Last year was Lewis Hamilton. We'll see how it is now. But yeah, a nice P9 with 2 points. And we go on to the second race in Bahrain. Now this, I qualified absolutely terribly. It was just not good. The car handled horribly. And like I said again, with the force feedback, I did not know what the front was doing. It just kept giving me that same rubber band feel. I had no idea what the fronts were doing. And that's pretty annoying when you try to be quick. But also, I think the setup was probably not the greatest. But yeah, I don't normally struggle this hard on Bahrain, but somehow in 2019, I struggled. So as we begin the race, trying to fight our way through the field to try and, again, as per usual, make it into the points. I was thinking, in typical fashion, the AI seems to be pretty strong in qualifying, but absolutely terrible in the race. I was like, this is going to be a piece of cake. I would be able to overtake them. So here we are, overtaking Stroll with a slightly overheated engine. I am almost in the points. I just have to make it to Grosjean. So after my first pit stop, this is when I realized, oh my goodness, those tires handle absolutely terrible. It is way worse than what I had before. And after that, I unfortunately lost control of the car by touching the forbidden curb and DNF'd. Charles Leclerc wins this race. And again, in China, terrible qualifying. Let's see how we do. I just wanted to drive consistently, carefully, and try to make it into a point. P10 is my goal. Making my way on the outside to really try and handle the car, but man, in comparison to F1 2018, somehow I felt even less information in F1 2019. The cars in braking felt better than 2018. It wasn't so easy to lock up. But under acceleration, it's like the cars really had no grip. I mean, they had grip. It was weird. Maybe it's just I had too much confidence at times. But yeah, as I was trying to make my way through the pack, I was consistently fighting against Stroll, and that was tough. But we kept doing the leapfrog maneuvers. Vettel comes out of the pits. I tried to go out on the outside. He leaves the inside open. Stroll takes his place, and then now Vettel just keeps slowing me down. I'm like, whoa, what is happening? And there was literally nowhere for me to go. So after that came my pit stop. And I came right beside Stroll after his pit stop. He was on softs. But, since he was just fresh out of the pits, he was a little bit slower. So I was here on the inside, and he just turns in on me and damages my front wing. And this is one thing that I have to say. The F1 2018 AI was very forgiving. They were almost afraid of you. But in 2019, this is when we started to see, this is what I started to see in these races. The AI was more or less, they forget that you exist. So, yeah, as I was losing more and more time, I decided to go to the pits. And I noticed, there's really nothing I can do. A virtual safety car came around. I was thinking, okay, pit for mediums, really push hard until the end of the race, if that's even going to work. But my gap was so great in comparison to Magnussen. It was tough to really make my way back of the field. I kept on pushing, understeered, then I just gave up. So yeah, that was a DNF for this race. Who wins? Is it a Lewis Hamilton? It is. So Lewis Hamilton wins this race. But yeah, so 2 DNFs in a row. That's great. It's great news. But yeah, the physics in 2019 somehow felt even more on and off in terms of downforce. You had the downforce and suddenly it's just, no, you're going to go understeer all of a sudden. So here we are now in Baku, in Azerbaijan, for the 4th race of the season. And here I was thinking, you know what, Baku, I tend to do good. The rear tires really scream, they're suffering the most, but I do pretty good over there. So I should be fine. The car is quick, even though my qualifying was not that great. I should be fine. So as I was making my way up the field, I catch up to Stroll. I thought, well, I'm racing against Lance Stroll. How hard could it be? So I tried to overtake him, and I was about to overtake 3 people at once, but sadly Grosjean was in my way. But overall, I still managed to overtake them. Now Stroll managed to create a bit of a gap, but I caught up to him, especially through the castle section, because I tend to be pretty quick over there in comparison to the AI. And I was catching up to the big teams. But as I thought I was going to overtake them, here I see Stroll still keeping up with me. So I was like, okay, we could do some teamwork. Do a bit of leapfrogging, DRS leapfrog. And I thought that would work because, it seems like it's a pretty good solution. So here we are trying to catch up to the pack. But Stroll, every time when he overtakes me, he starts creating a huge gap. And that's when I began to think, oh my pace is not that good in comparison to the rest of the pack. I tried my best to at least keep up with Stroll, because if Stroll can put it there, then that means the car's performance is there, and I should be able to keep up with them. I kept trying to keep up with them, but man, as the tires were not doing so good, and the handling of F1 2019, it just didn't feel too great. I don't know what kind of setup I could have put, because if I put way less downforce, the car suddenly is way more twitchy than I want it to be. I was fighting against Albon for a moment, but yeah, F1 2019 overall, I'm always going to put some bits of information in what I think of the game, but yeah, it's the same feeling in terms of force feedback. The car handling is very similar to F1 2018, with a little less of that handbrake feeling when you're downshifting, so that's pretty good. But after that, it's like they made the cars more sensitive over acceleration. In F1 2018, there was always a bit of grip. Even when your wheels are spinning, if you're not going too fast, there was always a bit of grip. But in this game, somehow there isn't. Anyways, I spent the rest of my race behind Albon in 7th, so that's not bad. Leclerc wins the race. That's not bad. I finished in a decent position, at least in the points, and not a DNF. But Lance Stroll, man, he really just showed me off. But yeah, that marks the end of this episode. I'm not going to lie, seems like it's a bit of a messy one. But, hey, we're just here to see what these games do in comparison to the future games, especially, like I mentioned before, F124. And these games really bring me back. I'm not going to lie, they really bring me back. So I will see you in the next episode as we will finish up or go to a halfway point of F1 2019, as I will give more of my thoughts. And then, yeah, we'll see how F1 driver finishes the season, if he finishes strong ahead of Stroll, or if Stroll continues to show that performance. But yeah, with that being said, that is the end of this video. If you like. If you want to see more, subscribe, and I'll see you in the next one. Goodbye.